It's that time again. This year is drawing to a close and Nitrobeard is taking a look back at the best gaming moments. In that spirit, here are my top 10 games for 2012. Like always, the standard caveats apply. This is only amongst the games I got to play, and the only criteria is how much I like the game personally. Your list will almost certainly be different, so don't be offended. Number 10. Liberation Maiden. Level 5 software for Nintendo 3DS. Liberation Maiden is a bite-sized shooter for the 3DS eShop. Its targeting system is a cross between Rez and Kid Icarus Uprising, but unlike both of those games, you've got pretty much free reign in piloting your mech around the level. For 4 out of the 5 levels, you follow the same basic routine. Destroy 3 shield generators, then take out the boss. There are a few gimmicks and optional tasks thrown in to give it some healthy variety. The 5th level is entirely a boss fight that, frankly, can get a little tedious at higher difficulties. It's an $8 game, and be advised, it's exactly as long as an $8 MSRP would suggest. You can easily finish the entire thing in a few hours, but level rankings, higher difficulty settings, and unlockable gallery content give some replay value. The plot is utter nonsense, combining several goofy anime tropes, but thankfully it's ultimately unimportant aside from being an excuse to travel to multiple locations. By stripping back the unnecessary parts, they've made a game that seems a lot more at home next to SNES shooters like Cybernator or even Desert Strike, and they do it at a discount price.
I, Shoko Azora, will fulfill my duty as second president of New Japan!
Number 9. Final Fantasy XIII-2 for the Xbox 360 by Square Enix. It's incredibly strange that I really don't go in for RPGs, and yet I have 4 on my list this year. Part of that is owing to my own efforts to expand my palette, but a part of that is also due to a handful that had novel combat systems. See, it's not the concept of an RPG that I dislike. In fact, I love playing games where you get to take a character's role and live in their shoes for the duration. It's the repetitive, menu-driven combat that I loathe. Final Fantasy XIII-2 drew my interest both for its combat system and for its focus on time travel, one of my favorite sci-fi topics. Instead of picking the same attack command over and over and over again, you instead create a set of strategies for your character to follow, and then employ those strategies in battle. It gives the player some role in determining the outcome, without subjecting them to the tedious art of micromanagement. The time travel element raises some interesting plot points, like the character from the end of time who may or may not cease to exist if you fix the time stream, but ultimately it's hard to follow the plot or care about the character cameos along the way if you haven't played Final Fantasy XIII. Keeping in mind that this is a totally subjective list, Final Fantasy XIII-2 is relegated to the 9th spot because, as a new player, it couldn't make me care about what happened to any of the characters or even make me remember their names.
Paradox is affecting space-time itself.
Right, and we have to find out what's causing this.
Number 8. Xenoblade Chronicles for the Wii by Monolith Soft. It's easy to forget when we look at HD games that sometimes the most technologically amazing stuff is the stuff that creative developers manage within strict limitations. For its insanely large open world and its unbelievably short load times on a system with 1/10 the memory of your average smartphone, Xenoblade Chronicles deserves a large dose of respect from the entire gaming community. While I haven't gotten very far in the game, the autopilot combat system hits the right balance again between active participation and micromanagement. The characters attack automatically and the players tasked with launching special attacks, setting off combos, picking a party strategy, and healing. There's a lot to do and battles can get pretty complex, and Lord knows the UI could stand to be simplified. Where I left off, my character had recently learned how to use the sword's precognitive abilities to avoid one-hit kills. Assuming you remember exactly what you have to do to avoid that particular one-hit kill. Still, you're not forced to select attack over and over and over again, and you can easily avoid most battles since they're not randomly triggered. While the game does frequently get too complicated for its own good, it edges out Final Fantasy XIII-2 simply because I like the world in which it takes place, and there's a lot of it there for me to explore.
Now it's right time! Nice job! Who else wants some?
Number 7. The Last Story by Mistwalker for Nintendo Wii. The Last Story is also graphically impressive in that it's a pretty game despite the Wii's shortcomings, but unlike Xenoblade Chronicles, this is not so much of a technical feat as it is an accomplishment in design and detail. There's nothing that happens in the game that makes you think it shouldn't be possible on that hardware, but every scene is exceptionally clean and cohesive. Of the 3 JRPGs on my list, this is the one that has a battle system closest to an action game. You attack enemies by running toward them, in the tradition of ease, but a lot of the game mechanic is based around using aggro to position enemies and create openings for your party members. While the game world isn't as expansive as the one in Xenoblade Chronicles, you get an overall more ushered experience with The Last Story. At least in the beginning, it's clear where you need to go and what you need to do. More importantly though, it quickly builds a small cast of characters that you can't help but like. It edges out Xenoblade Chronicles in my book because not only do I want to play more in that world, I don't feel like I'll get lost if I do so.
Your delightful manners are just what one would expect from a mercenary.
Oh, you really want your ass kicked, don't you? Then bring it!
Stay your blade.
Number 6, Mighty Switch Force by WayForward for the Nintendo 3DS. The 3DS eShop was a treasure trove of short but sweet gaming experiences this year. Pushmo only missed the top 10 for me by a hair's breadth. And chief amongst them was Mighty Switch Force. It's a puzzle platformer that hinges on swapping certain elements between the foreground and the background. I should state that it's entirely possible for this mechanic to be done on a non-3D system, and in fact is being done on the Wii U as we speak. But the effect of having things clearly behind your character or in front really helps you sort out what's happening at any given moment. As you traverse the levels to round up the escaped criminals, you're going to have to rely on sharp reflexes. The most difficult puzzles hinge on timing jumps and block switchings, with only a few pixels of breathing room. The game leaves you wanting more, and it made me extra happy that WayForward provided just that in the form of a totally free DLC pack several months after release. It's a subjective list, and that mensch move probably unfairly colors my opinion of the game. It's just so hard to argue against a game whose only real flaw is that you wish there was more of it so that you can keep on playing. Number 5, Code of Princess by Atlus for Nintendo 3DS. If you told me last year that there'd be a side-scrolling beat-em-up game on my list, I'd be shocked that anyone in 2012 would shoulder the risk of such a thoroughly dead genre long enough to get a game to market, much less that it was any good. Thankfully, someone does care, and Code of Princess is pretty solid. There are 4 main characters you can use in the single-player quest, and each one has an entirely different set of skills: a fighter, a thief, a necromancer, and a sage. Each fight nets you EXP, and you can level each of the characters in your save file across a handful of attributes. You can also buy items that provide buffs and abilities. If you're ever feeling underpowered, you can replay previous levels as a form of EXP grinding, and as far as my game went, I did pretty much end up playing every level twice. While the different play styles should keep you coming back for more, the lack of variety in storylines between the 4 characters sucks a little life out of it. You basically have to start from scratch at level 0 and also rework your entire strategy just to get a few extra lines of dialogue that have no impact on the greater arc. The solid writing and tongue-in-cheek humor managed to keep this in the realm of missed opportunities and out of the realm of tedium.
We must protect this sword no matter what.
Number 4, Mass Effect 3 by BioWare for the Xbox 360. I'll admit it, I'm not very far into Mass Effect 3, it's just that it didn't take very long at all for it to pull me back into its universe. The aesthetics are great, the characters are interesting, and the execution is phenomenal. The writing and voice work are top-notch, and they do a great job of breathing life into the cast of characters. Despite the urgency of invasion, the missions you undertake to create your war coalition don't seem strange or forced. What appeals to me about it mostly is that it's pretty much Shenmue meets Star Trek, minus the awkward Virtua Fighter-derived fighting segments. I'm trying very hard not to judge this game by its ending. I know it's coming, but I would rather focus on the journey than the destination for now. While you're playing it, the game is an amazing experience, even if it does totally fall apart at the end.
Holy hell! What is that thing?
Number 3, Asuras Wrath by CyberConnect 2 for the Xbox 360. I can't help but feel sorry for Asuras Wrath this year. This is probably the single most tightly built gaming experience of the last decade. The pacing is perfect except for that damn hot spring segment, and the story's told phenomenally well even if it is a bunch of bullshit Japanese metaphysics. The game's made up of a series of perfectly portioned 20 to 30 minute segments. Each one works as a self-contained episode, but also advances the plot. This was clearly written by someone who understands the mechanics of storytelling in a TV series, and adapting that talent to a video game was a stroke of genius. What lets it down ultimately is that it ends abruptly and requires you to buy DLC to know at all what happens at the end. It's not a DLC extension of the story, it's the last fifth of the game that they must have forgotten to put on the disc. So while it gets to sit comfortably at number 3, Asuras Wrath is a victim of a poor marketing decision and the 360's inability to compete with the Wii U's party piece, off-TV play.
What?
Number 2, New Super Mario Bros. U by Nintendo for the Wii U. New Super Mario Bros. U is the best 2D Mario game since Super Mario World, which is, of course, the best 2D Mario game in the series. And if I'm honest, it even gives Super Mario World a run for its money. And being able to switch that experience from the TV to the controller and back at will adds a whole new level of awesomeness. The game adopts Super Mario World's world map concept, but it also applies the new Super Mario Bros. Convention of having your path branch off at a few points, so that even though there are 8 worlds in total, you only need to complete 6 of them to get an ending. I never really liked that convention though, so that's a negative on this subjective list. What keeps the game out of my top slot, however, is just how similar it is to Super Mario World. I first played Super Mario World when I was about 12 years old or so. Back then, I'd come home from school and have at least 3 or 4 hours to play games before my parents got home, and virtually all day Saturday and Sunday. Whenever I managed to get to the TV before my brothers, that meant I had a lot of sustained gameplay for finding secret exits and dragon coins. I just don't have that kind of free time anymore, and I lost interest in this game pretty much as soon as I beat it. My only compulsion for going back to it now will be to see those 2 worlds that I skipped altogether. After that, though, I probably couldn't be bothered.
Mario #1! Woohoo!
Number 1, Assassin's Creed 3 by Ubisoft for the Wii U. Before you ask, yes, I did beat Assassin's Creed 3. The trick, however, is that the 10 minutes of asinine stupidity at the end of this game wasn't bad enough to spoil the preceding 30 hours or so of gameplay. I love the story missions, I love the brawler side missions, I love the liberation missions, I love the assassination side missions, I love finding high places and synchronizing before diving off of them. Just because all that was followed by one of the dumbest pieces of plot ever penned doesn't negate how much fun I had. Hell, I'll admit it, I even liked the Desmond segments, though I didn't like Desmond himself. Having the plot unfold by opening up the cave's rooms was a neat thing, and that vague plot was actually kind of interesting, until they, made it unvague. Even the plot work in the historical setting was solid, and Ubisoft's use of time skips to get past irrelevant points in the characters' lives is a concept that every developer should adopt toot sweet. The cameos were dumb, but the historical context led to a beautiful living world that's just so easy to get lost and pretend in. Heck, sometimes when I play, I try to walk inconspicuously from mission to mission. After all, an assassin wouldn't run across rooftops just to get around. That'd draw way too much attention. Letting me jump into that role in such a ridiculously detailed and well-realized world gave me the single most enjoyable gaming experience of the year. For building a virtual world I can totally love and letting me come visit it whenever I want, whether or not I have access to the TV. Assassin's Creed 3 for the Wii U is my game of the year.
You Ben Church's man?
Well played.